Thank you so much for joining us here at the First Alert Desk on Atlanta News First Plus. I am Maria Moreau, joined here by meteorologist Courtney Giacobazzi, who you will hear from in just a moment as we continue to track your First Alert weather day and all of the weather impacts that you'll need to know about. I wanted to start by telling you what you can expect as you tune in here with us. If you were with us on our YouTube Live just moments ago, we took you out to our 1 year anniversary of devastating tornadoes special coverage. We wanted to take a look back to a year ago where several communities across Griffin, Spalding, Troup County had one of the most vulnerable days weather-wise. So many lost their homes. So many are still picking up the pieces and navigating their lives to this day. So as we talk about the severe weather that we are going to be experiencing today throughout the afternoon, we will also reflect back on January 12th, 2023, and the day that brought down destruction. I wanted to start by taking a look through some of that devastation. As you saw earlier, if you were with us just moments ago on our stream, communities really in shambles and homes destroyed. So much was lost on that day, January 12th, 2023. And it's important, a year from now to talk about the community that gathered in support of one another, that rebuilt together over the past several months to the year, and really reflect on coming together at a time when we experience these types of weather vulnerabilities, and also taking a look ahead to today and tracking isolated strong storms as well as the possibility for severe weather. We are really getting underway into the midst of it and what will be possible severe weather throughout this afternoon. For that, I want to turn things over to meteorologist Courtney Giacobazzi with a look at your forecast. Courtney, I'm going to switch out with you here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maria. Today we do have our First Alert weather day in place for that potential for severe weather. Our first alerts essentially give you a heads up of what to expect if we think the weather is going to impact you in some way. And that First Alert weather day, of course, an extra step up if we think that it's going to impact your day in a big way and potentially impact your safety. So our severe weather threat has started to dwindle, definitely not as widespread as the past couple of days, but definitely not none either. So over my shoulder here, this is kind of the overview of what to expect, and we're going to take you through everything you need to know as we make our way through the rest of the afternoon to get you and your family ready for any rain, storms, and potential severe weather that is to come over the next several hours. So scattered storms will be possible between now. We've already had a few rumbles of thunder out there. Maybe you've heard some heavy rain over your roof, outside your window, through about 6 o'clock tonight. So yes, that will encompass your evening commute this evening, especially if you commute between the 4 and 6 o'clock hour. Strong storms will be possible, as will severe storms, and isolated severe storms are possible, with the main threat being damaging wind. It's already very windy out there. Most of the area, in fact, all of the area underneath a wind advisory for very gusty wind that you've probably felt pick up through the day, very chilly wind at that, and we'll talk about why that's key to our forecast in a minute. But any kind of severe storms, a severe thunderstorm that is sparked because of wind, is damaging wind gusts that are ringing in at 58 miles per hour plus. A lot of times in severe thunderstorm warnings, we'll see those 60 mile per hour wind gusts being recorded. The tornado threat is now very low, and we're going to talk about why in just a few minutes as we make our way through this stream, but the tornado threat is not none. And unfortunately, specifically for places like Troup and Meriwether, Heard County, so a lot of the areas that were impacted this time last year, that's where we're going to be focusing again today. So let's take you through. I'm going to grab my clicker here so we can move through some of these graphics here and give you a look at what to expect as we go through your Friday. Here's a look at the weather system that is brewing across now the southeast, extending all the way into the Midwest. If you've been following some of the news this morning, including the national news, you probably heard that there were ground stops in Chicago because of the blizzard-like conditions there. That is all focused around this weather system that's bringing us the chance for rain and storms and even severe weather later today. So right now, what's happening is this weather system is starting to what we call occlude. You can see that purple line underneath that low there. That is ultimately an indication that this weather system is starting to weaken. The difference in the warm and the cold air that the fronts are separating, that's starting to kind of override each other and mix. So that creates a weakening storm system. Now, what's key to our forecast is that warm front. That's that red line right there with the little half circles over it. That is starting to move north across the area. And as it does move north, our temperatures will actually start to warm a little bit. So right now, Atlanta's sitting in the 40s. We could ultimately end up in the 50s. Now, how far that warm front moves north is going to be key. We have something called a wedge in place. If you look all the way up to the top of your screen, over to near where that QR code is, there's an area of high pressure there. Well, that is important to our forecast. What that area of high pressure is doing is trying to still spill in some cold air from the north, and we call it a wedge here in North Georgia. You've probably heard us talk about these all the time because they do impact our forecast quite frequently, especially with our mountain range that we have that extends into Blue Ridge, of course, the Appalachian Mountains that ride up along the eastern half of the United States. What happens is that area of high pressure, you see the arrows rotating around that going clockwise, that's pulling in cold air, and then it runs up against the Appalachian Mountains and spills into North Georgia a lot. And that's currently what's happening. So that high is kind of blocking the ability of that warm front from soaring north of us and destabilizing all of our atmosphere across North Georgia. So the further south that warm front stays, the better that is for North Georgia as that cold front trails quickly behind and kind of lifts everything up. So we'll be watching very carefully First Alert Radar to see how essentially north that warm front goes and how much that can really stir up our atmosphere to allow for all the ingredients to come together for severe weather. But right now, as models have progressed, as we've watched the system progress and weaken a little sooner, our severe weather threat has also naturally diminished, as it just doesn't look like that warm front's really going to encompass all of the area and help destabilize or make our atmosphere more volatile. Here's a look at what's going on First Alert Radar right now. This is just before 1 o'clock here, and we have some storms up in parts of Floyd and Chattooga County. It looks like even up towards Hall County, Lumpkin County, and the Gainesville area, so over towards Lake Lanier. It looks like downtown Atlanta getting some heavy rain, North Fulton County, and then south of us, down towards Thomaston, Griffin, Covington, into the Eatonton area. Some heavy rain also starting to move in. Now, the cells that are just back out in Alabama right now, that's what we're going to have to watch as that warm front continues to lift and our atmosphere, especially in our southern counties south of I-20 from Heard down to Troup and Meriwether counties. We'll watch those little cells roll over because those are the ones that could pick up on some of our wind shear. We're going to talk about ingredients for tornadic cells in just the next couple of seconds here, but we'll be watching those little cells move over into Georgia and see if they can pick up on any of that unstable air, and also if they could pick up on any of that wind shear. It's those teeny little cells. I call them small but mighty. It's always the small ones you got to worry about because those are the ones that can take advantage of wind shear a lot easier and can sometimes spin up tornadoes. So that'll be something we're watching for. First, I want to time everything out for you. So again, we have the heavy rain up in the North Georgia mountains right now, encompassing a lot of metro, especially north of the area. And we're watching those cells roll over from Alabama into Georgia. So here's 2 o'clock. Notice over towards Carrollton. Now, this model is not going to necessarily pick up on exactly where these cells are going to spot, but it'll give you at least a general area. From I-20 south, we'll watch cells that could form, maybe start to spin. As we head towards 3 o'clock, any of that heavy rain that's up in the Georgia mountains, again, the air is just not going to, or the environment, I should say, is not going to be conducive for severe weather, but still the chance for maybe some thunderstorms, maybe some damaging wind gusts up there. That's definitely a potential with some heavy rain, which could down trees. But when it comes to any kind of tornado threat, we're not thinking that for the mountains. Cold front is starting to move in at this time as well, so a lot of things kind of working in tandem here. 3 o'clock, that front moving over the Alabama-Georgia line, and we'll be watching from Carrollton down to LaGrange for maybe some spin to start occurring and ultimately bring us that chance for maybe an isolated tornado. But again, that threat looking a lot lower for us today as our atmosphere just isn't necessarily going to have the perfect trifecta of ingredients for widespread severe weather. So Friday, 3:30, we're watching mainly West Georgia. So if you took Georgia and you split it in half, we'd be looking west of Atlanta. Front moves through downtown as we head towards 4 o'clock. At this point, we're looking for the potential for maybe some damaging wind, and far east Georgia for more severe weather. And then as we head into the 5 o'clock hour, a lot of things are starting to push east of the city into Athens, impacting places like Rabun County, down into Hall County, through Clark and Oconee counties, into Jasper and Putnam counties, down towards Covington and Eatonton. And that front will eventually push out by 7 o'clock, and we'll be able to let our guard down. So I think our primary time for severe storms will be between around 2 and 6 p.m. And the threat is isolated, but the greatest threat for any kind of tornadic cells going to be south of the city. And all of us will experience the windy conditions, but when it comes to any kind of severe wind gusts, that would be, again, 58 miles per hour or greater. That is possible in storms, especially as that front makes its way through. That front's going to provide a little extra lift. And that's always the time when you'll have the greatest chance for some of those more damaging wind gusts that are in the severe category. Let's talk about our setup today, because again, I was showing you on First Alert Radar our weather system that is starting to brew and move into our area, impacting really just a huge chunk of the eastern half of the United States, of course, including the Midwest with the snow. So essentially what's happening is we're watching that warm front, and underneath a warm front is warm air, just like behind cold fronts is cold air. And so underneath a warm front, that's where the air gets unstable. You have the Gulf of Mexico, you have wind coming in out of the south underneath those warm fronts, and then the Gulf is that moisture source. So you need the warm and moist air to really destabilize the atmosphere and shake it up, make it very volatile, right? So that's why if that warm front was to lift a little further north, that would make our severe threat greater, which is what we were thinking was going to happen a little earlier in the week. But then when that wedge started to move in, and I will say, when you have a wedge set up ever, it's really difficult, especially when it rains. So when you have rain and you have a wedge that's pulling in that cooler air, that rainfall can actually reinforce that wedge, make it a little stronger. But models struggle with that. And so that's why when you have a setup like this with a wedge and a potential severe weather event, models really do struggle in figuring out what's going to win. Is it going to be the warm front in that weather system, or is the wedge going to win? And in this case, the wedge won a lot for North Georgia, ultimately decreasing our severe weather threat. So let's move on forward. So we have that warm front moving north. Anywhere underneath that warm front, higher risk for severe storms. That wedge is bringing in the cold air, which is more stable. What that cool air does is cap the atmosphere. So think about if you were to shake up a soda bottle, right, and you kept that cap on it, nothing's happening. But what happens if you loosen it up a little bit? It explodes. So that's essentially, if that warm air was going to start to erode that wedge and kind of push it back, that's that explosive nature that allows for storms. But with that cold air on top, I don't care how much you shake that soda bottle, nothing's happening unless you loosen that cap up. So that's what that cold air is doing for us, and really kind of keeping our environment less explosive and with a lesser threat for severe weather, just kind of putting a more relatable aspect for it, something that you can really think about and visualize in your head. Because I know sometimes when we talk all these crazy weather jargon, it can be really hard to keep up and kind of understand and follow. But that's ultimately what that cold air is doing for us. And as that cold front moves in, that cold front is going to lift everything up. So anything that has that warm and unstable air in place with that moisture getting pumped in from the Gulf, that cold front's going to come and lift it all up and create that chance for potentially severe storms. Here's a look at the temperatures. You can really see that wedge in place. Notice a lot of us sitting in the low 40s, especially north of the city. That cold air again spills in off the Appalachian Mountains, and it really impacts places north and east of the city, and you can definitely see that with our temperature profile. But look at far west Georgia. I know Carrollton, you're in the low 40s, but Noonan, LaGrange, you're in the upper 40s to low 50s. That warm front is going to continue to lift at this hour within the next couple of hours and warm you potentially closer to 60 degrees. So anywhere that's going to get close to 60 degrees today is going to be a spot to watch, as you will have more fuel for storms, which takes me into what we need for tornado development. So I kind of brought you through what our forecast setup is. Now here is kind of an explainer of that. So in order to have tornadoes, you need a few things to all come together. Now, there's a little asterisk to put when it comes to the fuel and heat and moisture, especially this time of year, because heat in the winter, 60 degrees is warm this time of year, but in the spring and summer, that's cold, right? So a little different of a setup in the wintertime, but you need fuel, which is in the form of some sort of heat. And again, that's kind of relative to the time of year you're in, and moisture. You also need lift, which is in the form of a cold front. And then you also need spin. We call that wind shear in the meteorology world. And in this pattern that we're in, where the jet stream keeps dipping really far south, bringing all this cold air, well, the jet stream is a very fast-moving tunnel of wind in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And so that fast-moving tunnel of wind already gives you that change in wind speed with height. But then, as it moves in, and you have wind coming in out of, let's say, in this case, the south, and you have that jet stream kind of giving you more of a northwesterly component to your wind, that's changing the direction with height as well. So you'll get these dips of cold air with these weather systems, and the jet stream shoving these weather systems into our forecast area. And then you have surface features bringing in wind coming in at a different direction, giving us that wind shear. And so sometimes, especially in the winter, you don't even really need the heat. You have so much wind shear to work with that can create an environment that can promote tornadic activity as well. So in this case, while we do have the fuel in the form of the heat and a little bit more moisture south of the city, we also have a lot of wind shear as this weather system moves in. So the perfect trifecta of ingredients, this is what causes for the greatest threat for tornadoes. But because that warm front is not lifting far north, we have that wedge that's keeping that cool and more stable air. We are losing one ingredient. And when you lose one ingredient, that lessens your threat for tornadoes. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily none all of the time, but it lessens it when you can't get all three of these ingredients to work together in tandem. But south of the city, particularly, it looks like from Heard County, Troup, Meriwether County, maybe Pike and Lamar and Upson counties, we'll be watching you for all three of these ingredients to come together because it's definitely a possibility today. Here's a look at that tornado risk. So 2%, not none for all of North Georgia. So we'll still keep our eye out, but the greater risk for a tornadic storm is going to be from Carroll County southward, including Heard, Troup, Meriwether, Upson County, parts of Monroe County, parts of Pike and Lamar counties. And this is just kind of an outline. This isn't a perfect draw. So if you live in Griffin and you're looking at this and say, oh, I'm at a 2% risk, I'm perfectly fine. This isn't necessarily an exact draw out, but this is what happens is when the National Weather Service and the Storm Prediction Center, when they're starting to make their forecast to send out these products, they look at the ingredients in the atmosphere and say, okay, who has the best chance at seeing this? And then they draw these lines. So again, weather is not a perfect science, but so we're just letting you know that we will be watching for the tornado threat, and the best chance is mainly south of the city and in far west Georgia as we watch these few little cells, little discrete cells move in. What I'm going to show you now is what we call STP, the significant tornado parameter. This takes those ingredients that the Storm Prediction Center looks at in order to draw those lines, and they look at things like, again, the wind shear, how much moisture is in the air, what's the temperature profile looking like, and this product gets created. So the brighter the orange and the red, the higher potential for tornadoes. And it's pretty, we're going to really watch out in Alabama as we head into the 3-4 o'clock hour at what exactly happens. What's the evolution of this system? Is this coming true? And are these values ringing correctly? Are they being is this model forecasting this correctly? Because Alabama, their environment is going to look very similar to what Southwest Georgia is going to look like. So we're going to be keeping a really close eye on what happens over in Alabama. And in fact, we will be speaking with some meteorologists out in Alabama a little bit later in this broadcast. So you'll want to stay tuned because they'll be able to give us a little bit of insight on their forecast as well, because this weather system is going to impact a lot of people across the Southeast. So it's always good to kind of hear from them as well and get another perspective. But by 4 o'clock, see that orange color starting to move into LaGrange. So Troup County there, that's the little cells are going to be starting to move over, and we'll watch and notice that light orange color extends into Troup and into Pike and Lamar County, into Upson County. The greater risk for tornadoes is south of here, where that warm front is really going to destabilize the atmosphere. So central Georgia southward, from Macon southward, even to the coast, that's where the greatest threat for tornadoes is. For us, again, we'll be looking south of the city, and this is still very low, still a very low end threat. We'll primarily be looking for that around your time to come home from work. So between like 3 and 6 p.m. is when I think we'll really be on high alert for maybe an isolated tornado. The damaging wind risk, by and large, is going to be the greatest. That's going to impact just about all of us. Of course, it's already very breezy out there. And I just want to say, of course, we here in Atlanta, we are the city in the trees. So we always tell people that when the wind picks up like this, trees come down. We've already had a couple of reports of trees down. So you just need to be really, really careful as you're heading out and about. The rain has already picked up. We received record daily rainfall the other day on Tuesday, which was our other first alert weather day. So we just can't stress enough that you need to be very vigilant as you're driving around as the wind picks up, the rain falls, because that could lead to some downed trees because the ground is already very saturated. So just be very mindful, especially if your commute takes you along tree-lined streets. Sandy Springs, that's somewhere that I live very close to. I know that when you drive through Sandy Springs, it's 2-lane roads through a lot of that town with trees absolutely lining all of them. So you just need to be really, really careful. That was one city in particular. We saw a lot of damage on Tuesday. So this is our damaging wind risk for the day today. Obviously, that is encompassing most of the area, and we do have that wind advisory. So outside of thunderstorm winds, it's just going to be a windy day, period, because that weather system is going to move in. Essentially, that low will ride to our north, that front will move in. Those are both changes in pressure. Pressure differences create wind, so that's going to really pick up our wind as we go through the day today and into tomorrow morning. This wind advisory goes until 1 o'clock in the morning. Wind gusts upwards of 35 to 40 will be possible. Let's take you through that wind threat kind of hour by hour here. So as we make our way towards 2 o'clock, maybe some of you parents are going to be running errands. I know some school districts have kids out of school today, so maybe you're just trying to get a couple of things done. Maybe let them try and just stretch their legs a little bit. It's going to be really windy through the afternoon, so wind gusts widespread 15 to 30 as we head towards 2 o'clock. That front moves in around 4 o'clock, so that'll pick up the wind within itself, and we'll be looking again at widespread gusts 20 to 30, isolated gusts 30 to 40. If we do have any severe storms, that's, of course, gusts upwards of 60 miles per hour. And then as we head into the evening, everything will die down. Now, the good thing about this is that we are going to pick up only about a half an inch to an inch of rain. So flash flooding is not likely for the day today. That was on Tuesday where we had the really high flash flooding threat. But today, flash flooding not looking to be an issue. We could have some isolated issues on the roads because of the heavy downpours, and we'll get multiple rounds of potentially some heavy rain in some spots where the cells kind of line up and come through in multiple rounds because we've had already some rain move in now. We'll have more rain roll in the next few hours along our front. So in some spots, this is pretty concrete. We have a lot of concrete streets and buildings, and Atlanta doesn't hold water very well. Concrete doesn't hold water very well, so even just an inch of rain can cause some problems on the roads. We've seen it happen, so just be careful, as there could be some ponding in the road at least, but it's not going to be a widespread flooding event like we saw with our last first alert weather day on Tuesday. Tuesday, in fact, we picked up 2.75 inches of rain within just a day. Within a day. That's about a month's worth of rainfall in a day. So for the year so far, we've picked up 4 inches of rain, which puts us at about a 2.5 inch surplus, which is great in the form of trying to get us out of our drought that we've been in, that we kind of ended 2023 on. But what I want you to get out of this is, as the wind picks up, and we've already picked up a lot of rain, the ground isn't just going to bounce back. It's very saturated. So that is just an extra kind of word of caution to you, that not only could some of the water pool on the top because the ground is still very saturated, but that just means that the ground is a little looser, right? So that could lead to some downed trees as the wind continues to blow today, not only in the potential for severe storms, but just with that constant wind that's already picked up today, that's going to kind of rattle the trees a little bit and create that issue potentially for any kind of downed trees. We will be watching for that, and if we do get any kind of damage reports, we will let you know. So that is what we're looking at when it comes to the threats. Again, the wind is going to be the big one today. We're all going to feel really breezy. And then we'll also watch for maybe an isolated tornado, especially for our southern counties, particularly between around the hours of 3 and 6. We could have severe weather happen a little earlier as, again, that warm front makes its way in. That's going to make our atmosphere a little more rowdy. So it's currently starting to move in, and we'll continue to watch our temperatures slowly climb. And what we're going to look for is how warm does it get, especially in the city of Atlanta. That's going to be a huge indicator of where that warm front kind of made it, and if the wedge ultimately kept our atmosphere a little more capped with what our setup is right now. So we do have, again, that potential for severe storms. And I'm going to actually check back in on First Alert Radar really quickly and just see what's going on out there in case any of you are just starting to tune in and you're hearing some of the rumbles of thunder. Maybe you're hearing the heavy rain and you're wondering what's going on. Some of those cells that are starting to make their way from Alabama just south of the Anniston area, they're kind of moving into Carroll County. Just looking at the signature of that on radar, it's looking a little suspicious. So we're going to keep an eye on that guy where you're seeing some of that lightning that could be moving into Carroll County. Just the structure of that within itself looking a little suspicious. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. By the way, while I'm speaking of that, probably a great idea. Actually, not probably, it is a great idea to download the First Alert Weather app because it will alert you if there's severe storms in your area, if there's heavy rain even moving your way. I got a notification not but a few minutes ago that there was some lightning detected in my area. And so if there is any kind of severe weather that happens, now that we're starting to watch things get a little more active across the southeast, it will let you know if there's a severe thunderstorm in your area, if heavy rain is moving your way, and then of course you can always watch our live coverage through that app. So it's a great tool to have just to keep you informed from start to finish as we go through our active day to day. Want to check in and see the big picture and just check in on where exactly that warm front is headed. It's going to take me a couple of scans to get through here because we've put pause points in the First Alert radar for you. But nonetheless, again, watching some of those cells moving in from Anniston, potentially into Carroll County. Here's our big setup. So that warm front, look at it. It's starting to move in to North Georgia. So our temperatures are going to start to warm. And that cold front, what it's going to do is going to lift all of that up. That cold, more dense air is going to sink underneath that warmer and more moist air and lift everything up and create those explosive storms. But again, mainly south of the city because of that high that you could see over near Boston there. That's pulling in some cooler air that's stabilizing our atmosphere and leaving it very, very chilly out there. It's feeling like a winter day for sure. But how far that warm front can go north and how much that could destabilize our atmosphere, that's what we're going to be watching. But without a doubt, it looks like south of the city from Hurd, Carroll, parts of Troop, Meriwether, Spalding, Pike, Lamar, Upson. We're going to be watching you as undoubtedly that warmer air and that warm front's going to take over you. And that's just going to give you that perfect trifecta of ingredients, that fuel, that lift from the cold front, and that spin from the wind shear that's present in our atmosphere. All those three ingredients come together. That just gives you that better chance for an isolated tornado. The threat is isolated today. It's not going to be like a year ago where we had that outbreak situation that we've been giving you coverage on, looking back 1 year later at our Griffin Spalding County tornado event. Not going to be anything to that caliber, but one tornado, just like we talk about during hurricane season, one hurricane, that's sometimes all it takes to cause some big problems. So even if there is a singular tornado warning, that's still a tornado warning for someone in some of our counties, families who have to deal with that, and it doesn't make it any different. Of course, when you have widespread damage, it's tough and it's makes it a more impactful day. But at the end of the day, even just one impacts somebody, right? So we'll be keeping a really close eye on it to keep you and your family informed and safe. Of course, we're going to be going through not only looking back at a year ago today from that event. Isn't Mother Nature kind of strange? Isn't it kind of crazy that just 1 year ago, we were here tracking tornado after tornado, looking at not only just isolated tornadoes, which is the case today, but long track tornadoes, severe weather event. And now here we are 1 year later talking about the potential for severe weather and even tornadoes across the southeast. Mother Nature works in crazy ways. She is a little crazy. You can't control her. You can't tame her. But it's definitely not a coincidence. The world runs on a cycle. We have the jet stream that's constantly moving around our atmosphere, moving things in, moving things around. And so there's definitely a cycle that goes through Mother Nature. And just the fact that it's exactly 1 year ago today, we were dealing with not necessarily the same setup, but something that's similar with the warm front, the cold front, the potential for tornadoes. Mother Nature knows what she's doing, y'all. It's cyclical, runs on a pretty tight schedule. So hence why we have a severe weather season at a certain time every year, right? So because things warm up and cool down in certain seasons. Weather is a cool science. I could nerd out about it all day long for you guys. But again, that's what we're going to be watching for. Not necessarily the chance for any kind of flooding today, but we could have some ponding in the roads from those heavy downpours that are clearly making their way through the city right now. But our First Alert Weather Day, because this weather is going to impact you in a big way as you're making your way home from work, because we're watching for the chance for maybe an isolated tornado, isolated or not, the tornado threat is there, especially south of the city. And that's scary if you live in an area where if we do end up getting a tornado warning, we're going to be here to keep you safe, keep you informed. But we don't take any of the severe weather threat lightly. So we're just trying to get you ready for it because it's Friday. I know you guys are probably looking ahead to the weekend, which we are going to talk about your weekend forecast because it's going to get pretty cold this weekend. But today, of course, our first alert weather day for those scattered storms through 6 o'clock. The biggest risk going to be strong wind, and we do have that low-end chance for a tornado, especially south of the city. I am going to leave you on this graphic really quickly. We are going to talk about the weekend, and then I'm going to leave you on this little cliffhanger. Maybe the potential for some winter weather next week. And I said maybe, underline italicized, right? But we'll talk about that coming up in just a couple of minutes. So just hang tight with us.
All right, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Joining you back here is Maria Moreau. If I can get myself on screen, bear with me, folks. Got a bit of a snag on our system here. But as you can see, you're currently looking at scattered storms, which we're tracking through the 6 o'clock hour, severe storms, and a tornado threat, which, as Courtney just said, remains low for the area. I am just trying to change over, get you guys out on the roads with a check of your traffic conditions. However, we seem to be having a quick technical issue, so bear with me, folks. I'll be right back in less than 60 seconds. The whole team jumped in. All right, we just had to find a way to pop back on the screen. We're back, as you can see, full operation here at Atlanta News First. There's me on your screen, but there's a hardworking team of people dedicated to bringing you your severe weather coverage. I wanted to continue our coverage here by taking you actually outside onto the roads with meteorologist Cutter Martin, who has been kind of tracking the conditions for a lot of you. You're about to hit that afternoon Friday commute, ending your work week, maybe ending it a little early and hitting the roads. You're just going to want to know what to expect. So Cutter, I'm going to bring you in now here with us. First Alert meteorologist Cutter Martin out in Fairburn in the First Alert weather tracker. How's it going on the roads?
No huge issues. We were driving on Interstate 20 earlier this afternoon, right around the noon hour. And for noon, I-20 was pretty busy, especially on the west side of the interstate, headed eastbound into the city of Atlanta, packed up just a little bit. Roads are wet. You know, it's been raining off and on at times. Rain has been heavy. Again, you're taking a look outside from the Coolray First Alert tracker. We're in Fairburn, looking across kind of, we pulled off just into a parking lot here to kind of regroup for our early evening newscast. And you can see it's gloomy, it's damp, it's cold, and what you might not be able to tell on this particular camera shot is winds are picking up a little bit, as Courtney was talking about, that warm front moving northward, winds increasing a bit, but not enough to dry things out. It is still very soggy out here, and even outside of the heavier downpours, it's still drizzly. And it's kind of a soaker of an evening commute. So even if we don't have severe weather, certainly we will have wet roadways across North Georgia, Metro Atlanta, pretty much the entire area for the Friday drive. And when you think about the Friday drive, it's typically an earlier commute for most. They leave the office a little early. Everyone hits the roadways at about the same time, and you're all going to be greeted, for better or worse, with wet conditions. Now, we did not see any real issues out there. We haven't seen any ponding. Rain was heavy at times, but it was moving. It was brief. It wasn't your persistent heavy rain. So wet roadways, certainly bank on it, bet on it, and prepare for that for the drive home on this Friday. But so far, no issues. Again, we have not gotten into the heart of the evening commute. It is only 1:25 in the afternoon, and unfortunately, timing-wise, it does look like some of the heaviest rain will be moving in right as people do begin to hit the roadways. From west to east, that rain, the heavier rain and the gustier winds moving in. So that's something we're going to be watching out for, and we'll be keeping people updated on right here from the Coolray First Alert tracker as we get into the evening drive home. Maria.
Yeah, Cutter, as we talk about this, Courtney actually touched upon the importance of getting people prepared as far in advance as possible, and that's what y'all did with this First Alert Weather Day. All of the hardworking meteorologists here at Atlanta News First kind of tracking the system, giving it as much advance warning, and then just being transparent. Hey, everything that we learn, we're going to bring to you right here. So as we're starting to get into that afternoon, evening time period, I know you guys will be following this closely. Hopefully we'll check back in here with you down the line as we continue our stream. But for now, thank you so much, meteorologist Cutter Martin out in Fairburn right now with a check of your roads. All right, I want to take this time to tell you guys about our new messaging system. If you have any weather pictures, videos, questions that our meteorologists can answer here at Atlanta News First, do text us. We want to hear from you, and we will be able to get back to you and interact with you through our messaging app. The number is going to be 470-777-WANF, so that's 470-777-9263. Now, coming up ahead, we're going to try to connect with our sister station, WBRC, with a closer look at the impacts we're going to be seeing in Birmingham. I know a lot of you probably have friends, family, loved ones out over there, so we'll hopefully get you some perspective from over there. But I wanted to first get you out to a couple counties that we're watching closely, as meteorologist Courtney Giacobazzi mentioned. Troup County, Spalding County, a couple of those counties that we're keeping a close eye on. And I want to start with a conversation we had earlier with Fire Chief Glenn Polk, who's also the Director of Emergency Management for Spalding County, with a look at preparation efforts and talking a little bit about what was devastating tornadoes that touched the ground 1 year ago.
Director of Emergency Management there, Glenn Polk, Mr. Glenn Polk, thank you so much for being with us. I know, you're very busy, but I also would imagine this is a somewhat emotional anniversary for you, because you're not, this is a community that is such a part of who you are and that you're so involved in protecting.
Right. This is a tough day for us, and then with the threat of another round of severe weather, it's just kind of brings it full circle for us.
So 1 year later, where are we in terms of the recovery efforts?
We have a resilient community. People just come out to help their neighbors. But with over 2,200 homes and businesses affected, damaged to destroyed, it's been a big undertaking, and it's been a long process. We're very blessed to have a long-term recovery team that are working every day to try to find out cases of people that just have needs, and they just trying to meet them where they're at to fill their needs.
Yes, and I'm going to play some of the video again showing the damage from 1 year ago. You know what? Now I think I'm losing your connection when I do that, so I'm going to hold off on that. But listen, I want to ask you, because it's such a layered approach. Like you mentioned, just the extent of the damage. What is involved in the recovery here? What does it take? What are the daily tasks that your team and the community are involved in, just to kind of get Griffin back to where it was?
I mean, first rule of thumb was getting all the roadways and access for emergency vehicles in and out, and it took a good 2 months through the end of March just to get all the debris taken care of, and then just trying to help people after they applied for the FEMA assistance and found out what the insurance would allow, and then just trying to fill in whatever gap there may be to fill their needs, and just help them get on that road to get back to whatever their normal was.
Sounds like it's been a very stressful and overwhelming year, to say the least, and probably painful in a lot of ways.
True, but I tell you, with the community we have and the folks that come together, it makes it easy on everybody, and we're very blessed to have those folks.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it's been amazing the way that the community seems to have come together. What do you think is still left at this point in terms of recovering and really getting this community back to where it was and where everybody wants it to be?
Just finishing up, finding out what if there are any needs out there, trying to meet those, and then just the ongoing process of rebuilding and the cleanups on the different properties.
Yeah. So I'm so glad you're able to lay out this context, because now today here we are, it's the first alert weather day, and we're preparing for the possibility of severe weather in many places around the state. And I mean, your community lived through what the worst of the worst can be. So what is the preparation? What's the feeling today?
Even though we're fortunate that the threat level has decreased, but we don't want to let a guard down. We want to always be weather aware. We're prepared the best we can be for whatever we may be faced with, and we just don't want to be unprepared. So that's what we encourage in all of our community to do. Just stay weather aware and have your early notifications and be ready should something come our way.
When you say be ready, be prepared, what does that mean? What do you do to get prepared?
So already have some kind of preparedness plan in place, whether that's what is your safe areas, whether you're in your own home or out and about running errands or whatever. Then always main thing is having the early notification systems. We have one here in Spalding County we use called Civic Ready. That's the opt-in system that we would love for everybody to have that. But time is always of the essence. The sooner you get a notification of danger coming your way, the faster you can react and go ahead and put yourself in a safe area.
Do you think it's better to just go ahead and assume that it's going to be dangerous and make certain preparations? For instance, maybe if you have animals, go ahead and bring them in. Things like that. You want to put a tarp on certain things or tie things down that might fly away. Stuff like that. What do you think? Any other tips like that?
Definitely, anything you can do to be proactive to save you time to get yourself and your family into a safe area, the better. Time is always the toughest part of getting that preparedness event under control.
When you see the folks that have, maybe suffered damage or maybe injury because of severe weather, do you ever see things that they could have done that would have maybe changed the outcome, prevented a negative outcome?
I mean, there's always things, and that's why we promote preparedness all the time. But in the heat of the moment, people just do the best they can, and that's why we just try to promote the extra effort of being prepared to try to take all those variables out of that.
Yeah. Any tips, like just kind of little tips, for people, like should they unplug certain electronics, things like that? Should they, put away? I don't know. This is you're the expert here, but I'm thinking like a space heater. People are using space heaters this time of year. Is that something that you want to maybe just take out of the mix for today and unplug it, because God forbid there's a strong wind that comes and blows it over and it starts a fire? I don't know. Any advice like that?
Yeah, I would just say as long as you have that extra notification time, then you can take care of those incidents that may cause further damage or harm. So space heaters, especially this time of year, always go by the manufacturer's guidance on placement of that. But as long as you have that early notification, then you can address those so they don't even cause any further damage or harm to your family.
Any other thoughts or advice for our viewers?
Like I said, just the early notification is the biggest key, and just going, not being complacent. Just expect the worst, and we always hope for the best. And we're ready. If anybody needs anything, we're already have our team geared up and ready to go.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, and being prepared. You've been emphasizing, and also the notifications. I mean, we provide notifications on Atlanta News First. If folks download our free mobile news app, they can get notifications sent right to their phone as well. Are there some other notifications you think that people need to take advantage of?
Right. Weather radios are a good backup. But like I said, we have an early notification system here in Spalding County that's free of charge, and it's on our SpaldingCounty.com website registration page under Homeland Security. So just opt in, and you can even tailor it to the alerts you want to receive and how you receive them, whether it's text, phone call, or email.
And that was Fire Chief for Spalding County, as well as the Director for Emergency Management, Glenn Polk. Some very life-saving tips there, some good things to keep in mind as we're going through today and really in the future whenever we have a severe weather event, is to just be informed and be prepared. And that is what we're doing here at Atlanta News First. So I'm taking you out now to a look at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. You can see that rain and the muggy conditions that are outside as we continue to track this weather. weather system. Right now, I want to take you out to our sister station, WBRC in Birmingham, and I have here with me, joined by meteorologist JP Dice. JP, thank you, first of all, so much for what you and your team do around the clock to keep everybody weather ready. Wanted to bring you in on this conversation because you are also tracking this system.
Yeah, this system has remained fairly tame, Maria, so far. One of the reasons, the lack of instability, noticeably cool today with the temperatures in the 50s, just not a lot of thunderstorm activity with this. What we have noticed, very strong winds, gradient winds with this system, and we've seen some winds top 45 miles per hour moving across the Birmingham area. Lots of reports of power outages, trees down, and some periods of heavy rain. So it's really turning more into a big wind and rain event instead of a tornado event because of that lack of instability.
And we know we want to make sure we're keeping people weather ready regardless of the severity. And that's why we're here today. That's why I can see your team is reporting from out in the elements, and you guys are tracking all of this closely. For Alabama and the Birmingham area, any preparations that people can make right now, maybe just following along to certain news updates or otherwise as we're all following with this weather system together?
Yeah, one thing to watch out for, any loose items around the house, be prepared for that. Pull those in, secure them. Could be the trash can outside. With the way the winds are, that's going to end up down the street. Also, have a plan in case the power you lose it. Have your mobile devices, have them charged up, because the chances are with some of these power lines down and the trees down and so forth, you could have some power outages. And there is still a remote chance for tornado development with this, even with the lack of instability. There's a tremendous amount of wind shear. So the tornado risk is low with this system as it continues to move to the east on into Georgia, but it is non-zero. So as we always say, have multiple ways to get warnings just in case. But by and large, a lot of rain and some very gusty winds. These winds are going to exceed tropical storm force winds. At least that's what we've been experiencing here with those winds over 40 miles per hour. Something, a few moments ago, you had video of Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. Here at Birmingham, just a few moments ago, the winds are so strong, airline aircraft are having to make multiple attempts at landing because those winds are just so tough for the pilots to manage and land those aircraft safely.
And we talk about the storm system like this, severe weather events like these, and what comes to mind for a lot, especially on a day like today, is January 12th, 2023. A year ago, we saw EF3 tornadoes touch down and the devastation that came out of that. I'm sure your team and yourself, you were covering that around the clock. Talk to me a little bit about what we saw a year ago.
Yeah, what you're looking is a typical cool season severe weather event. And you do get those. A lot of folks think tornado season is spring or maybe fall. No, you get them here in the deep south. We get severe weather in the winter time, and it does not take a lot of instability to end up with a tornado developing. And the reason for that, the winds just above our heads are moving at such extreme speeds. There's a lot of wind shear in there, and there is enough to take just a little bit of instability and turn that into a tornado. So if you can get a little surge of those higher temperatures and higher dew points, you can get a tornado develop on a day like today. Hence all the outlooks that we've seen from the Storm Prediction Center. So that was what was going on back at that time period. You were looking at just a little sliver of instability with extreme wind shear, and you started to get some rotation in that, and then you end up with a pretty significant tornado. So never discount the cool season, the winter weather. It's not just snow and ice. Sometimes it is actually tornadoes and damaging winds here in Alabama and Georgia.
And JP, we're actually getting some YouTube questions for you. As we talk about a system like this, someone was asking, is this a preview of what spring weather with these storms will look like?
Not necessarily. I think it's a preview of perhaps the rest of the winter season. We are in an El Nino pattern. An El Nino pattern means the southern branch of the jet stream here in the United States is very, very active. So what you end up seeing with that, you get more precipitation, you get more wind shear in the atmosphere, and you have a better chance of seeing severe weather days during the winter months. And that's why we've got This event, we had earlier in the week some higher winds, and coming up next week, we're also talking about a threat for some winter precipitation across parts of the southeast. So it's a very active pattern, and it's one system rolling in right after another.
Thank you so much. For your viewing area, Birmingham, the Alabama community, obviously we're following all of this together, but any words of advice, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think what we need to do is kind of take it easy this afternoon, monitor the weather, have your devices charged because of the gustier winds. And I think right now we can breathe a little sigh of relief because we're not seeing a lot of development in terms of severe thunderstorm warnings or tornado warnings. That's very unlikely to happen for us this afternoon. We're going to keep the weather office staffed, and we're going to be watching all of that just in case. But I think the chances are fairly remote of seeing any kind of significant severe weather this afternoon, aside from the gusty winds, which themselves can be very problematic with the power lines and the trees.
WBRC First Alert meteorologist JP Dice, thank you so much for joining us, for chatting with us. Hopefully your viewing area stays safe throughout today and has a more pleasant weekend.
You bet. Good talking to you, Maria.
You too. This is a good reminder for you all. We are also looking out for your text messages, questions, images, videos, anything that you could really send our way and connect with us as we talk about this First Alert Weather Day. You can send that right here to 470-777-WANF. That is 470-777-9263. We're monitoring closely. I actually have some of that chat open right now, and I can see a couple of your messages, not too many about this weather system, but we'll continue to look out for those. And if you can send any questions, thoughts, images that you might see in your area, some of that rain, we will share that live right here where you're watching. So taking you back out to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, we're going to go through some impacts together and taking a look at this for the first time here with you. I'm going to pull up a website called FlightAware. It's a public website that you can access as well, and that is a great tool when you're trying to monitor the impacts for flights. So I'm going to take you out to that website right now. As you can see, some planes still taking off, and the patch around that green, yellow, red, that is the system that we're talking about here. I'll let meteorologist Courtney Giacobazzi explain that a little more in depth from meteorological perspective. I cannot say that word. That is why I'm not a meteorologist. But talking a little bit about the impacts, that is what we're seeing right now. If you scroll down a little further, that shows you some of those cancellations and delays that we're starting to see more and more of, and that is typical with planes and airports just taking precautions, as you heard from meteorologist JP Dice with WBRC. They are starting to see some travel impacts on their end, and then taking you out to this outage map, and that is something that anytime we have a severe weather event, we're monitoring. The good news in all of this, as you can see, not too many power outages right now, looking like a lot of green, and that is the 1 to 50 area. It means up to 50 people could be experiencing power outages. That is typical for what we see on a power outage map like this. But if you were with us Tuesday, we took you out to this map and it was in the red. And that means that there were areas, neighborhoods, large portions of residents that were experiencing power outages, and Georgia Power really working around the clock to respond to those. Another thing I want to take you out to is traffic. And right here earlier, if you were with us on Atlanta News First, this is a live look outside at the Fairburn area. Our First Alert road tracker monitoring conditions on the roadway closer. Cutter Martin will join us back here later on in this stream with another look from the road as a lot of you head out of work, concluding your work week for the day, heading into the weekend. But taking you to this GDOT map, this is a good tool for monitoring any traffic impacts that we could see. Anytime it rains, Atlanta freaks out a little. I'm just going to be transparent about that. We do see some rain-related or weather-related impacts on the roadways, whether that be from people getting on the road and getting into crashes or more traffic with cars moving slower and taking precautions. So we want to keep you as safe as possible. Do be more diligent anytime there's rain or other weather conditions on the road. You just want to be extra cautious when you're making it to your destination. We want you to make it in one piece. This is another good tool to let you know about any closures you're going to want to avoid and just keep you updated on the weather patterns and really showing you the conditions as they are before you even get on the roadway. So a lot of impacts that we are monitoring. If you do have anything that you're seeing out where you are, do text us. 470-777-WANF, 470-777-9263 is going to be the number. We have our Atlanta News First team monitoring. I have it pulled up in front of me, so I'll see it right away, and we can either show your images and videos on here on this stream or answer your questions. At this time, I am going to check some of our Facebook and YouTube comments. If you are joining us there, please drop your thoughts, questions, any stories that you might have on weather events here across the metro Atlanta area. We are in an area of the country where we see some of the really the most interesting weather events. I know from my time here, since moving to Atlanta, I believe 3 years ago, I've seen weather events that I haven't seen previously throughout my own experience. So it is really important during that time that all of us stay informed as much as we possibly can. And that is why we have a First Alert Weather Day. So let's check real quick if we have any YouTube questions, comments, thoughts. Someone saying hello from Marion County. Just a little rain, a light rain, and wind here this afternoon. Thank you so much for that comment. Wind was something that our meteorologist Courtney Giacobazzi talked about, something you're going to want to factor in if you're getting on the road, that the wind conditions. We'll touch base on that a little more. Someone else saying Noonan canceled school for today. That is important. Yes, Noonan did cancel their school today. I'm actually going to pull up at this time school closures that we were following here at Atlanta News First earlier today, if I can get to that page. But there were several counties that announced cancellations, delays, because they were not looking to take a risk with the severe weather conditions. I also want to take you through this timeline right here, if you can bear with me. This is our Atlanta News First webpage. Just if you have our app, you can access this on your mobile device. But taking a look at the timeline that we laid out for you earlier today, this was the weather conditions that we saw earlier in the day around 11 a.m. and a bit ago into the 1 o'clock hour as our team of meteorologists here at Atlanta News First were tracking those conditions. Now I want to take the time to look ahead to the afternoon, that commute period that a lot of you are going to be getting on the roadways, headed home, headed to your weekend destination maybe. As you can see, the rain conditions kind of creating clusters as they move out of that eastern Alabama area towards metro Atlanta and into that south metro area. And then 7 o'clock is when we're going to possibly see some of that rain dry out, and you'll kind of get normal looking metro Atlanta back for the most part, with the storm leaving the area at around 7 o'clock. Our meteorologist Courtney Giacobazzi tracked that for you earlier, but if you wanted a digital tool to have, maybe to share with a loved one as you're going through today, that is a fantastic resource that our meteorologists are constantly updating. So download the Atlanta News First app, go to our atlantanewsfirst.com webpage, and we will keep you updated on there as well as right here on Atlanta News First Plus. At this time, I'm going to bring in meteorologist Courtney Giacobazzi here with me. I'm going to unmute your mic there so the people can hear you. You joined us earlier really with an hour-by-hour detailed forecast. Any updates of what we're seeing now?
Really just very windy out there. As First Alert meteorologist JP Dice said from WBRC over in Birmingham, that's really going to be the most widespread threat for us today is going to be the wind. But just because of this pattern we've been in with the rain we received on Tuesday, record rainfall for the day, in fact, and then more rain today, plus that wind, you pair those two things together and it can cause problems in the form of things like power outages, which, as Maria just showed us, really aren't an issue right now, but that could progress through the day. So that's really what we're going to be watching before. That tornado threat very low, not none, especially in our southern counties. We're watching for a couple of key factors to play out through the rest of the day. Is a warm front going to lift north? Is it going to destabilize our atmosphere? Right now, it's not looking likely. We're still very, very chilly. And just even looking out at the airport, that picture of that really thick cloud deck, that kind of misty look there, that is a true indication of a wedge forming, which ultimately, Maria, what people need to know about that is that keeps our atmosphere stable. So it doesn't let things spark up quite as easily, and really takes away a key element you need for severe weather. So we'll kind of keep watching conditions, temperatures. We'll look and see what the skies look like, because that's really going to play a huge role in ultimately what our day pans out to be. But thankfully, not only out in Alabama, but here at home, it looks like our severe weather threat is kind of diminishing through the day, but it doesn't mean that you need to let your guard down just because of how windy it's going to be. That alone is going to impact everybody today, and we just need to be really vigilant, especially as you're traveling around on the roadways.
Yeah, I couldn't have said that better myself. A lot of people we've saw over the past few days use the word watching for a warning, and that brings into a discussion the terminology of a watch versus a warning when we're talking about weather systems, tornadoes, things like that. So for the people that are watching this that might think, oh, we might get a tornado warning or we're going to get a tornado watch, what is the distinction there in classifying those?
Yeah, so a really good thing to know. There's a key difference because I think a lot of times people will see a notification pop up on their phone that they're under a severe thunderstorm watch or they're under a tornado watch, and they automatically think that that's what's happening out there. And that's not the case. So very, two small different words, but two very big different meanings. So you have a watch, and you'll either see a severe thunderstorm watch, you'll see a tornado watch. Sometimes, of course, in the more tropical months, you'll see a tropical storm watch and hurricane warning, all the things. But in our particular case for today, if we were to get a tornado watch or a severe thunderstorm watch, quite frankly, that probably would have already happened for us. They usually try to issue those when they're expecting tornadic activity or severe activity to some caliber several hours out. They try to give you, a pretty good lead time to prepare you. I'm not saying that it can't still happen, not necessarily expecting a tornado watch. I just don't think our atmosphere is primed for that. And in the form of a severe thunderstorm watch, I also just don't think that impact is going to be great enough for that. But nonetheless, the key importance is a watch is kind of just to get you ready, that the atmosphere that this storm system is moving into is conducive for tornadoes or severe thunderstorms. And then a warning is when it's actually happening. And you're not going to get a watch every time there's a threat for severe weather. When the threat is isolated like it is today, you're usually not going to get a watch out ahead of it, but you still need to be on alert just in case it does happen, even if the threat's isolated. So a warning is when that's actually happening. In the case of a tornado, we're talking someone has physically seen it on the ground, so someone has spotted it, or the radar has indicated it. And a lot of times our meteorologists will show you the red and green colors on radar, showing you where that is. So that's if a radar indicates it, you'll get a warning. A severe thunderstorm warning is when the radar is picked up on, for instance, wind gusts greater than 58 miles per hour. So a warning is if that the conditions that warrant for severe weather are currently happening. A watch is just to give you that early heads up, almost like we say first alert. That's kind of like the Storm Prediction Center's version of first alert, just kind of saying, hey, heads up, the atmosphere is primed and ready for severe weather. We're trying to give you some lead time to get you ready for it, and just to be on extra alert for the next several hours.
That's a good thing that you mentioned, the first alert. That's another thing that we want to just clarify for people. We saw a first alert weather day on Tuesday. We're in a first alert weather day today. For the people that kind of follow along for our weather updates, that first alert and first alert weather day terminology is very important to distinguish weather events and conditions that change. But for those that might be hearing this for the first time or still need kind of a clarification, how do you distinct between the two, and what all goes into declaring first alerts and first alert weather days?
Yeah, and I mean, we toss that term around a lot, so it can get confusing, but it all has an important meaning to it. So first alert, we have those on the 7-day forecast a lot. It's essentially when there's going to be a drastic change in the weather that's going to impact you, kind of a nuisance. So if it's going to be really misty all day, like we've had recently, if it is going to get very, very cold, if we're going to have a huge drop in temperatures, or on the flip side, in the summer when our heat index values are extremely high, we give you those first alerts to kind of just give you a heads up that you're going to need to prepare for your day a little differently than you normally would because the weather is going to impact it in some capacity. Now, first alert weather day is kind of a little extra step up on the totem pole. Essentially, we think that the weather is going to have a great impact on your day, whether it's going to have a huge impact on a major travel day, or we think that there's going to be severe weather that could potentially threaten your safety. That's when we issue the first alert weather day. So, for instance, on Tuesday, we saw that huge potential for flash flooding, which did happen. We knew that that would lead to the potential for trees down because it was going to be a very windy day. We also saw that happen. So, and that did unfortunately impact someone's safety. We did end up unfortunately having a fatality on the roads from trees coming down. So, when we have the first alert weather days, not saying that they're all the same because I don't want that to get confused. Every severe weather event is different. Every first alert weather day is going to be different. But at the end of the day, we're in this active pattern. We have the potential still, while very low, for tornadoes and an isolated tornado, I should say. The threat is isolated. But nonetheless, it's there. And so, that impacts someone's safety. And we also have the wind that's picking up with the ground still saturated. That could impact your safety driving around. And more heavy rain falling today. So that's the difference between first alert and first alert weather day. First alert just kind of giving you that heads up that there's going to be some sort of nuisance weather that's going to impact how you're probably going to have to go about your day, whether you need to grab the extra coat, you're going to need to add some extra time on the road because it's going to be raining for your commute. But the first alert weather day is when we think we have a great impact on you and it could potentially impact your safety in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, super important. And another reminder to have the Atlanta News First News app, but as well as the First Alert Weather app, because you guys, our hardworking team of 7, by the way, I should say the largest in the Southeast, meteorologists here at Atlanta News First, you're updating it around the clock. It is a very personal, digestible weather resource. Tell me a little bit more about the app for those that might be looking for a tool to track weather conditions like these.
Yeah, absolutely. So our First Alert Weather app is great. We do have 7 meteorologists here, which is a just fantastic blessing because it means that we can have all hands on deck and just a lot of eyes on the weather because it is constantly changing. In fact, I do have First Alert meteorologist Patrick Pete on standby for whenever we want to have a chat with him. But so we can have 2 of your First Alert meteorologists kind of give you a synopsis of the weather because it's always nice to have, when you have 2 weather nerds kind of nerd out a little bit, it's always a good time if you're into that kind of stuff. But anyway, First Alert Weather app. So great tool to have. It's free in our App Store. Google Play also has it. And we constantly are updating it. You can turn on notifications. In fact, I've been using it on my phone throughout the day and just to keep an eye on what conditions are on radar. You can get live radar to see, hey, is it raining where I am or is it about to rain where I am? Can I head out to run errands right now or should I wait? But it'll also give you severe weather updates. So here it is on my phone. I'll put it over the microphone so you can see it. But looking at it, you could see some thunderstorms in North Georgia, but the most important key thing is right now, we're not seeing any kind of severe weather alerts, but there are a lot of really cool tools. You can go futurecast. So if you're saying, oh, it's not raining at my house right now, but I know it's supposed to rain today, but when? You can actually look at the models that we show you on TV, at least one of them, and it'll take you further in time to see over the next several hours, when is it going to start raining? Also, for instance, we have the wind advisory today. There's that option to put those kinds of alerts on there. When we are in hurricane season, you could put tropical tracks on there. So when we were tracking Idalia this year, you were able to put that cone onto the map and see where the potential track was for that storm. So not only in events like this is it important, but really all year, it gives you some great tools. Also, it has hour-by-hour temperatures. It has forecasts catered to your area to let you know if heavy rain is on the way, if lightning's in your area. So I could go on and on and on about all the really good tools that this app has. But it's really a great tool to have on the day-to-day, just to know what you need to get prepared for the day, but also just to have 7 meteorologists with an eye on the weather for you. You're constantly going to get updates from us in case anything is changing.
And personal messages, which I love
Yes.
the most about the app is seeing your faces. Hey, I have a few questions for you on our Atlanta News First Facebook page. Questions and comments, I should say. We'll read all of them. Miguel asking what time will it hit Beaufort and Suwannee, that generic area, if you can give any perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the rain and a couple of rumbles of thunder already up there this afternoon, ongoing as we speak. But the severe weather threat for that area, just in case that's more what's piquing your curiosity, extremely isolated up there. It is going to be very windy up in that area. You could experience wind gusts 35, maybe 40 miles per hour, and that's already starting, and that will continue through at least after sunset for you. But the physical cold front, any potential for severe weather, really not until about like 4 o'clock for you. Just to give it a more broad perspective, just to give you a little bit more of a heads up, I'd say between like 3 and 5 p.m. But the severe threat for that area is extremely isolated, but do keep in mind it's going to be very windy and the rain's already ongoing, so you just need to be vigilant as you're driving out and about up there.
And speaking of that rain, earlier we took you out to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, and it looked rainy and kind of foggy, but that has significantly worsened from what it looks like. It's a lot foggier now. That rain is looking like it's coming down a little harder, and the camera's shaking, which tells me it's windy, which is all in line with what you all were warning about and predicting. I do want to get into some other comments and questions that we're getting here. This is more of a comment, but an important one. Sanchez Turner saying, please be careful with these deep potholes that fill with water, and you can't tell how deep they are. Almost burst my tire on I-285. So that's another reminder for you to be careful on the roads. Our first alert, Coolray Road Tracker, actually on the roads now with a look at some of your conditions right now. Our Cutter Martin will be moving through the area and showing you those rain patterns, hopefully driving through your area so you can kind of see what it looks like outside before you decide to get on the road. Going through some of these other questions and comments here. By the way, if you want to reach us and you're not able to hop on Facebook or YouTube Live, we have a couple people watching on our Atlanta News First, Roku TV, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV. This is a good resource to connect with us. Text us at 470-777-WANF. That is 470-777-9263. I'm actually monitoring any and all messages that come in over there, so we will immediately get it. We can answer them live right here for you, or you can join the conversation on Facebook and YouTube Live. All right, getting some more comments here. As we scroll through these, I'm going to check some of our YouTube. Someone was saying Noonan County canceled school today. We saw a lot of delays in schools have cancellations earlier announced starting yesterday into this morning. A lot of kids got a head start on their long weekend, so I'm sure they weren't complaining. A couple other questions and comments. I'm just scrolling through here for you guys. Any problems with flooding? I'm sure with the rain, flooding naturally goes along with that. Any particular areas that are going to see more rain than others?
So I always say that Atlanta doesn't hold water very well, especially that 14th Street exit off of the connector. It really doesn't take a lot for that to start to go underwater. So just be really careful. I don't necessarily think that flash flooding is going to be a huge issue today, but because we are going to get these cells to kind of move in almost waves out ahead of our cold front, it's not necessarily impossible because our ground is so saturated from Tuesday's rain event. So if you live in a flood-prone area, somewhere where it kind of has some dips, if you live at the end of a hill or something like that, and that kind of ponds water. I know personally in my own backyard, I kind of live on the bottom of a hill, so we can get some pooling in our backyard as well. So if you live in one of those areas that's a little more low-lying, not necessarily impossible to have some ponding back there, but where we saw like parking lots underwater on Tuesday, definitely don't think that's going to be the case today. Today is really going to just be more of a wind event for us with that maybe isolated potential for a brief tornado south of the city. So flash flooding, not necessarily a huge concern, but that doesn't mean that that isn't possible, especially just with the way that the roads operate here in Atlanta. It's obviously when you make it into the big cities, there's not as much grass, so you don't have that runoff able to happen, and that can just allow for some ponding in the road. So take it easy, but not looking at anything nearly remotely close to what we saw on Tuesday with the rain.
And I thought this was a good chance to actually take you out to our Georgia Department of Transportation 511 website. Fantastic tool to monitor any sort of traffic impacts, closures, especially on a day like today, those can pop out pretty suddenly as more people get on the road, headed home from work, headed to their weekend destination, what have you. So we are going to be monitoring your traffic updates closely with our First Alert traffic meteorologists, kind of bringing you the latest information on closures and impacts and crashes and everything you might need to know. But if you have access to this website ahead of time, that's also a fantastic resource. Courtney, I did get 2 more questions through our text messaging system.
Okay.
Is the tornado threat over for Atlanta area at this time? It's 2:06 right now.
Okay. I don't necessarily think that it's. I don't want to say over. I do think that the Atlanta area within Metro has an extremely low chance, just because of how cool it is. That wedge is really ongoing. We saw that picture from Hartsfield Jackson that just got worse, and that's really just shooting out to me that the wedge is in place, because when you have the rain like this that falls, that can really reinforce it. When you have a wedge in place, that caps the atmosphere. So I don't want to say that it's necessarily over, because even on Tuesday, our tornado threat was extremely low, and we did have that one warning. So I don't want to say it's over, but I do think that's not our main concern right now, especially just with the conditions that are out there. I don't necessarily think that's going to be a huge issue for us today. So I wouldn't make that your top priority, your top concern, but you do still need to be weather ready and weather aware just in case. But just looking at the components of our atmosphere, and I haven't really had a chance to go back and look at necessarily what's going on in our weather chat, but our First Alert weather team is all here in the back over there, and we're going to have updates for you all day. So, because we'll constantly get updates, we work very closely not only with our team, but the team at Peachtree City, the National Weather Service office here. They are extremely bright meteorologists who also are analyzing the atmosphere and give us the real sciencey, nerdy stuff to essentially turn into language to put out to you. And so, of course, we analyze it ourselves, but that's just an extra tool we have. But just looking at the dynamics that's going on out there right now, I don't see a huge worry for tornadic activity in the city of Atlanta. I do think south of the city, we're talking Troop, Meriwether, so down towards LaGrange, Upson County maybe. That's where I think we're going to be focusing. But I would still keep your guard up, just on the off chance through around 4 o'clock or so for the city of Atlanta.
And again, more questions coming in as we're doing this. Some comments, someone saying hello from Northwest Florida. Hello to you, by the way. We spoke earlier to WBRC out in Birmingham, Alabama. So we're talking to really all of the meteorologists and the teams that are tracking the system together and kind of trying to keep you informed as much as possible, but taking a closer look locally here at the Metro Atlanta, Georgia area. Someone was saying, just to clarify, is it mostly just rain and high wind, or are we looking at something else here?
Yeah, absolutely. And that really is it. That's going to be the greatest threat for all of us. We're all under that wind advisory through 1 o'clock tomorrow morning. So you're going to hear that wind howling outside your window. I know I do. Personally at home, there is one tree that sits outside my window that hits my window every time the wind blows. And if you live in a house that has something like that, you know what I'm talking about. It's like the most annoying thing ever. But in all seriousness, yes, the rain and the wind are going to be the 2 big ones for us. If we do have any severe storms that spark up, that's primarily what's going to be the threat within that, I think, is more so a damaging wind threat. We've already, just looking at the National Weather Service chat, we have rung in wind gusts over 45 miles per hour in some of our northern counties. Over in Dade County, we have gotten reports of trees down already as well. So those things are actively happening already. And that's what I think this is really going to do. Today is going to be more so heavy rain in those pockets as those cells move in ahead of our cold front. And then also the wind that's already picked up and will continue to blow. JP Dice from WBRC in Birmingham, Alabama, meteorologist over there, made a really good point. Tropical storm force wind gusts, yeah, we're experiencing that. You go over 39 miles per hour, that's tropical storm force winds, just to kind of put it in a different weather perspective. And so anyway, that's definitely going to be our big threat today. Not saying that our tornado threat is none, but I do think that threat is extremely low. So the viewer asking if wind and rain is really what we're looking for, I would say yes, but not to downgrade that at all, because Again, we've already seen trees down, and we know that can cause big problems, not only when it comes to your family having power, it's cold as well. So if your power goes out, that's going to make your house a little on the chilly side. I'm not sure if that's better compared to summertime when it's really hot and your power goes out. But those things are possibilities today. So even though we're not necessarily looking at a heightened tornado threat like we might have been looking at a little earlier this week until, things progressed in a better direction for us, wind and rain is still something that can cause problems for us across Metro.
Yeah, certainly. And as we get more comments and questions, please send them in. We'll answer them right here on the live stream. I did just want to check your roads again. Taking you out right now to a shot of Midtown Atlanta, which you cannot see. I swear earlier today it was clear as day, but now it's looking like all you can see is that fog and heavy rain, and that is really a reflection of what the conditions are like outside right now. So for those of you that are going to be getting on the roads here or in a little bit, as the commute is already underway, but going to worsen as more and more people head from work and head home. Taking a closer look at your traffic conditions, I actually want to get you out to First Alert meteorologist Cutter Martin here in a moment with us from the First Alert Coolray Road Tracker. He'll be joining us here to take you through what the conditions are on the road so that you don't really have to get in the car and find out for yourself. We want to take you through those conditions and really get you as much of a perspective as possible. So we'll be joined by Cutter Martin here in just a couple minutes, but this is a look right now at Midtown Atlanta, believe it or not. I know it just looks like a white screen, but behind all of that fog, the rain, and the mess, we do have our beautiful city standing behind all of this weather, and hopefully we'll get a clearer view for you later on tonight as the conditions dry up. In the meantime, I want to get you out to First Alert meteorologist Cutter Martin with a look at the roads and the conditions for all my commuters out there. Cutter, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yep. We were just talking about the afternoon and evening commute. A lot of people are going to be getting on the roads, and it is already looking nasty out there.
Nasty, but thankfully not severe. Again, we're kind of camping out in an area, so to speak, a little bit south of the city where conditions are a little bit more favorable for maybe a strong to severe storm or two a little bit later this afternoon into this evening. Again, that risk lower than it was looking 24, 36, 48 hours ago, as the team has been really talking about today. But it is still gross outside. We're getting 20, 30, 35 mile an hour wind gusts every now and then. Of course, there's not that much debris around because it's wintertime. Things are dormant. We have pine needles, but nothing really else to blow around. But the soil is saturated. Look to the lower right-hand portion of your screen. That's an empty lot here in Fairburn. We're in southern Fulton County, southwest of the city of Atlanta. And this is a normal drainage area, but we have standing water. We just had a heavy rain event on Tuesday. We have strong gusty winds moving through, so that risk of a tree or two, as typically is the case in North Georgia Metro Atlanta with these kind of conditions, a tree or two may come down. Roads will be wet. In fact, we have heavier rain moving into the metro as the crow flies. Only about 15, 20 miles west of where I am is another batch of heavier, more persistent heavy rain. And you can kind of see that on the horizon there. Again, we're limited to our one camera at the moment, but notice how it's darker there on the other side of that auto zone there in the distance. That's on the horizon again, some lower clouds, darker conditions, kind of the leading edge of that heavier rain moving in really just in time for the Friday evening drive home. So it's a commute where you'll need extra time. You will need patience, as you always do in Atlanta traffic, but just more vigilance as well, because you'll have the rain and visibility reduced quite substantially with some of these downpours. It is pouring underneath some of these cells. We also have some gustier winds moving through, and the outside chance, again, not likely, but a couple severe storms may develop, mainly south of the city. So if you work in Atlanta, if you live in Griffin, if you live down in Thomaston and Upson County, if you live in LaGrange, outside chance of an isolated severe thunderstorm or two, but again, outside of that severe 58 miles per hour winds or stronger, hail to the size of quarters and tornadoes. Just because it's not severe doesn't mean there won't be some issues out there. We have more wind and rain on the way. Folks are driving just fine. Again, we're here in Fairburn and not noticing too much of an issue as we pan back outside. Roads are wet. It is windy. But really just a time period where you just need some extra time in your commute. Again, that's the main road, the main kind of small highway here. That is South Fulton Parkway, right at, I believe this is going to be McClure's Road and Georgia 92. So that's the intersection. You're looking at Campbellton, Fairburn Road. That's Georgia 92, right at South Fulton Parkway, a pretty popular intersection. Folks are moving just below posted speed limits, but it's not pouring at the moment. We're kind of in a break of the heavier rain, but certainly there is still heavy rain moving in. So a gross Friday evening drive home, but hopefully, fingers crossed with any luck, we can keep the severe conditions out of the metro and maybe even out of North Georgia as we get into the evening rush before things really begin to dry out. Maria.
And Cutter, you'll be joining us on Atlanta News First at 3, our newscast, our hardworking teams out in the community. Anything to preview there and kind of, I know you guys will just be looking at the roads and making sure people are as prepared as they can be.
Yeah, it's simple. I mean, we're just going to be out and about letting people know what is happening. And if you're still in the office, you can't leave till 6. Hey, our coverage starts at 3. You can kind of dip in and out of our coverage as you complete your last little bit of Friday work so you can get a heads up, a visual of what it looks like outside and where any problem spots are if they do happen to crop up. Again, we're just letting people know what's happening so that you don't have to do the same. We are out here. It's our job to make sure you're staying safe. And if there are trees that come down in certain trouble spots, or maybe there's some potting of water, or we're just letting you know that conditions aren't all that bad, whatever the conditions are, we'll let you know what is going on across the area, Metro Atlanta in particular, as we get into the evening rush. And again, that coverage from the Cool Ray First Alert Tracker starts again on Atlanta News First, which you can stream on a variety of platforms at 3 p.m.
Cutter, I appreciate all the work that you do, all of our meteorologists here around the clock, tracking these weather events so that we can be prepared for everything that Atlanta and Georgia and the weather systems throw at us. Thank you so much.
Of course.
All right, taking you back out to this view of Midtown Atlanta, as you can see some of that rain and fog affecting our sky cam here, but just beyond that is Midtown. That is the city we all call home. Normally we see it bright as and clear with dry weather, but not today. We have rainy weather patterns, wind gusts shaking our camera around, and some of that fog that is lower to the ground. I see some more comments from you here on our Atlanta News First YouTube page. By the way, if you're watching this from Atlanta News First, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, thank you for joining us first of all and staying informed and updated. But if you want a chance to join us on our YouTube or Facebook, we have a chat going there. You can also text us right here at 470-777-WANF. That is 470-777-9263. We had a couple people sending in some fantastic questions that we were able to answer here. We also use that to get any images from you, videos that we can showcase not just here on Atlanta News First Plus, but on air on Atlanta News First. So you have a chance to see your weather images and share that with your community members so they can get an idea of what those conditions are. So taking you back out to Midtown, as I look through some of your questions here, Paula Underwood saying that she's watching. Paula, thank you so much. We appreciate you. Also asking some questions about the counties that will be affected. Courtney, anything for the counties as we head into the later afternoon and evening period?
I think that, everyone here in North Georgia, no matter where you live, no matter what county you live in, you just need to be ready for a windy and damp rest of your day. And again, just because of the event we had not only on Tuesday, but now kind of working in tandem with today, you just need to be really careful because the ground is still saturated. It's still wet. So you pair that with wind. We have a wind advisory until 1 a.m. for all the area, high wind warning, which those are pretty rare. And we've had 2 this week for the mountains so far North Georgia, where wind gusts could exceed 50 to 60 miles per hour. That's going to be our big concern today. So no matter where you live, it's going to be windy. The rain could at times be heavy. And that's really what we're going to look out for today. Thankfully, because of what you showed over Midtown, that kind of damp and cloudy and misty look, that's a sign of stability. So that's good news and definitely lessened our severe threat. But if you live in Heard, you live in Troup, Meriwether, maybe Upson County, we're going to be keeping a really close eye on you over the next couple of hours because the feature that's giving us that damp and misty and cool atmosphere right now, essentially, that's not necessarily impacting some of our western counties quite as much. So the atmosphere just has a little more umph to it, if you will. We're going to keep an eye on how much instability, how much fuel we can get over the next couple of hours down there. So most of North Georgia, we're just kind of looking at heavy rain on and off and the very windy rest of your day, which could cause some problems within itself. But thankfully, the severe threat very limited. But when it comes to maybe that isolated tornado threat, we're going to primarily be looking south, places again like Heard, Troop, Meriwether, Upson, maybe Lamar and Pike for an isolated tornado within the next couple of hours. So,
Speaking of those counties, today is a really a weather anniversary for so many, and not an exciting or happy one, unfortunately. It is the 1-year anniversary of devastating tornadoes that we saw touch down in some of these counties that you just mentioned. And it's important when we talk about what happened a year ago today, that we also talk about the potential to see something like that happen again. Now, I want to clarify with the system that we're following today. I know our meteorologist, Courtney Giacobazzi, emphasized this. Cutter Martin had emphasized this. We're not seeing the same level that we saw in 2023. But important nevertheless, if you do experience your home, a loss of your home or a weather impact brought on by a catastrophic weather event, that you are, prepared for it, but also have a plan to respond to it. And for that, I do want to bring in our consumer investigative journalist, Harry here, Better Call Harry, as you all know him, to talk a little bit about some of what you can do if you do find yourself a victim of a severe weather event, much like the one we saw in 2023. Now, Harry, before we jump into this, I'm going to adjust your camera here because you're a little in the people's faces.
Oh my gosh, now I'm looking here.
This is live right here
This
on
is
Atlanta
live
News
TV and
First.
people are just kind of seeing right here.
And we are going to just bring you back to center here before we
All right, I'll
jump
stand up
in
straight.
on this
Hang on.
conversation.
This is live TV, folks. But we have some. Listen, we've got some really good takeaways for you, especially because I have a story to tell as you're still adjusting this. For people who from Troup County who had storm damage from last year, and a year later they're still dealing with the repercussions of what happened.
Yeah, and let me just show you some of that video that we have from a year ago. Mind you, there are many people, residents of these communities, that are still picking up their lives, that are still dealing with home recovery and financial recovery and all that goes into losing your home at this level. You are out in the community oftentimes with these folks. Talk to me a little bit about being a prepared resident in an area that sees tornadoes, that sees severe and catastrophic weather events.
You know, anytime you have an event where your home is damaged, listen, you're already dealing with family, you're dealing with kids or and just things, job, day-to-day life, and all of a sudden you've got to stop and worry about what to do with your home, depending on the severity of the damage. You may have to move out of the house, and goal number one is getting back in there so that you can get on with your life. So it's a really stressful event for everyone, and there is a rush, and that's natural, to get the repairs done fast. Unfortunately, a lot of the bad guys out there know that, and they take advantage of the situation. And I'll start with a story because it did happen in LaGrange to several people who, once they got the trees removed off of their homes, they needed the roofs replaced. And you'll find after any major storm, especially if it's in a concentrated area, where roofers will rush to that area, and there is no licensing requirement in the state of Georgia that roofers have to have. So basically, we could start our own company tomorrow, go out and buy a couple of chainsaws at Home Depot and start our own tree service. I'm not going to do that. But somebody's going to knock on your door if you're a storm victim, and there's a good chance, and say, hey, look, I could start right now. I've got a crew right here. And by the way, can you give me... it's going to cost $2,000 to remove these trees, maybe $3,000. Can you give me half now? Okay. Well, here's what happens a lot of times. this is with the bad guys. There's a lot of good tree services out there. So I'm just referring to the bad guys who will take the money, and it's a very common scam where they'll cut down the trees. They'll remove the tree. They'll cut it up. They'll leave it all there. And they're like, well, we'll be back tomorrow. Well, tomorrow never comes. And now you have to find another tree company to come out to remove the trees, which is, it's not cheap. Might cost you another $1,000. So the first thing that I always tell people is don't pay up front, especially, in a situation where they want all of it, or if they know that you already have an insurance check. You don't want to pay until the work is done. It's a little different when it comes to roofers and contractors. They're going to require a deposit. But once again, like with roofers, roofers don't have to be licensed in Georgia. So you and I could start a roofing company tomorrow and go out there. And what a lot of people do is they go out and they find subcontractors. They find crews who will come out and do the work. The problem is that they may want the money up front, which you should also never do. And they may either promise to come back and start the roof another day and never return, or they may not do the work properly. So it's really important to protect your money. You are in control as long as you have the money in your hand. And people really need to understand that the insurance company, when they hand the check to you, if you're making an insurance claim, that they're hands-free. They're not responsible anymore. They've already settled with you. That money is yours now. It goes in your account, and if you hand it over to somebody and you lose it, you've lost that money. The insurance company is not going to cut you another check. So let me start there. You have something you want to add?
No, I was just going to say, the work you do is so important because we talk about people in their most vulnerable moments that have just experienced a disaster or a loss that they didn't wake up prepared for or they couldn't have prepared for, right? You kind of just roll with the punches with these things, and then to be either scammed or to lose money like this, and all because someone is taking advantage of a situation. It's a lot more common than we often talk about, but that's why being informed is so important. So I know we're going through a day like today, and we're not expecting the same severity that we saw last year, but any takeaways, I should say, from you on making sure that you are as informed and as prepared as possible so that you're not one of these victims?
Take a breath. You're stressed. You want things done now, but take a breath. We've talked about roofers. We've talked about tree removal services. By the way, I always recommend hiring a certified arborist because they have to be certified, and a lot of tree companies are. But let's move past that, because now let's say you have structural damage to your house and you want to start the repairs. And this is what we're going to talk about today on air is hiring a contractor. A lot of people are ready to hire the first person who's ready to start the work now, and that is the last thing that you should do. So here's a takeaway. The first thing after a storm, and insurance companies require this, is if you have damage to your roof, is to get the tarp on the house and prevent further damage, because once water gets into your house, mold starts growing in about 24 hours. So you're up against the clock, but you could stop that clock once you get the roof covered, and now you're keeping the water out, and now you can make some decisions. You can start asking around, hey, do you know a good licensed general or residential contractor? Licensed is the key word here, because in Georgia, you have to have a license, and to get a license, you have to take an exam. It's not easy, and unfortunately, there are hundreds of unlicensed contractors out there. There's not much regulation, and they're going to say, hey, we can start now. Plus, we'll save you money because we don't have to pull a permit, and we can just do the work, and we'll save you $5,000. And, you can pocket the rest of that insurance money. No. The reason there are licensing requirements in this state is to protect you. So you want to make sure that you hire somebody who's licensed. How do you make sure? The Secretary of State has a website. You can even Google it. Just Google, how do I find a licensed contractor in the state of Georgia. It'll take you to the Secretary of State's website. We'll pull up and we'll put a link on our page, and you can plug in a name to see if that person is actually licensed. And another good recommendation we're making also today on air is we'll put the link online because I want to make sure that I get the name right. The National Association of the Remodeling Industry. Yes, I think I got it right. It's NARI. NARI.com is where you go to. And those people who contractors have to be licensed. NARI vets them. And, it's a good place to start. But you always want to check with the Secretary of State and make sure that the license is up to date before you hire anybody. I'm going to leave you with one more. I know I'm just talking and talking.
No,
but
this is great.
I almost forgot the most important thing. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars potentially in damage, and you get that check from the insurance company, and the contractor presents you a proposal, a contract. You want to make sure that there's a scope of work. You want to ask lots of questions, start date, finish date. And here's the thing. The contractors are really good at looking out for themselves because they have to. They're running a legitimate business and they could lose money. But to protect yourself, you need to contact, and I advise this for anyone, to contact an attorney who deals with contracts. If you could find somebody who deals with construction law, you can Google it, find a lawyer and pay him, $150 to $300 to review the contract to make sure it protects you so that if you end up getting involved in a lawsuit, you've got everything mapped out and you can protect yourself. That alone, that $300 investment could save you tens of thousands of dollars down the road.
And for people out there that want to connect with you, Better Call Harry does fantastic consumer investigative work and just keeping up with your stories. I've myself learned a lot about being a smarter consumer and protecting myself. Any way that they can connect with you?
Sure, they can reach me right through our website. There is a Better Call Harry section. You can email me there, or you can email Better Call Harry at WANF.com. That's a great way to reach me. And all of that comes right to my phone. I see all this stuff. And we have folks, we can't always get back to everyone because we get so many responses, but we try and put that information out there so that if you're in a jam, we have links online available for you to look up and take advantage of. And this is one of them.
Yes, and I was going to say our Investigates page, that is where you can find more of our investigative stories, the Better Call Harry page for more of Harry's work around the community, but also to share your story, you can go to our website, atlantanewsfirst.com. Harry, I'm going to just say it for the people. Thank you for everything that you do for the community. Thank you for keeping us informed, and we'll tune into your on-air coverage on Atlanta News First.
Thank you so much.
Taking you back out here to another weather camera here. This is Midtown. Look from the Piedmont Park area, as you can see some of that rain. Also to take you on the roads here briefly, and I'm going to bring back First Alert meteorologist Courtney Giacobazzi to give some perspective on this. We are starting to see some movement on the roadways here, a lot more people getting off work and kind of starting their commute into the afternoon. That is going to get significantly heavier into the evening. Luckily, towards the 7 o'clock hour, we are drying out. From what I saw from our own meteorology reports on AtlantaNewsFirst.com, we just took you to. But there you can see our First Alert Cool Ray road tracker on the roads with you. It's looking muggy. It's looking wet on the roadways. So don't need to tell you to just take extra caution, please. If you are one of these people that are going to be getting on the roadway, getting underway on your way home, we just want to make sure that you are being extra careful wherever you are headed today. So, Courtney, I'm going to bring you in. We're going to take a look, I believe, at our Georgia Department of Transportation, excuse me, a 511 webpage. Again, a fantastic resource, but that is where we can track some of the impacts that we're seeing.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's a great tool to have. You can use it on your mobile device if you need to. It's a lot easier on a desktop, but mobile still works just fine. And if you can, Maria, zoom into where that little exclamation point is to your left over to the west there. So when you click on that, that's going to show you you where the crash is, how many lanes are blocked. So it's really a good tool. And then what you don't want to see, and what really should be a red flag to you, is if you see that circle go completely red and it filled in, that means that the road is completely blocked and closed. So for instance, this is I-20 westbound near Industrial Boulevard, no lanes blocked. So the delays are probably going to be minimal there. But it's kind of like an ongoing joke that anywhere you leave your house in Atlanta or in North Georgia, you need to use your GPS because you just never know what you're going to run into. But the Georgia 511 website is a really good tool to use. We use it in our First Alert Traffic every morning with you from 4:30 to 10 to give you latest updates on the roads. That is the site that we actually use, among others and other resources, to give you your traffic. But you can track that in real time for you, give you an idea of when things are going to clear or how many lanes are blocked. So you can kind of commute around that and make your commute hopefully a little bit smoother. Of course, we naturally have GPS on all of our phones, which usually can help us, but sometimes it doesn't do the best job. Don't tell me you haven't been steered the wrong direction before on that. So anyway, just be really, really careful on the roads because when they're wet, naturally we do see more crashes. And just kind of a second note on that, which is the wind. And when you have high profile vehicles, things like semi trucks, school buses, if you have a camper, I know a lot of people are probably traveling around for MLK weekend, might be heading with your camper somewhere. You need to be really careful towing stuff like that because the wind will shake that up and potentially kind of, it could knock over. So the wind is high enough for stuff like that today, where if you drive those higher profile vehicles, campers, semis, buses of any sort, you just need to be really careful because the wind makes it a little more treacherous to do that through the day today.
And I just want to give a lot of credit to our meteorologist Cutter Martin right now inside of the First Alert Coolray Road Tracker, getting on the road so that you don't have to. If you don't need to, you just want to stay off the roads. We all know that anytime we get an ounce of rain, Atlanta drivers get a little crazy. I won't say, but it does create a weather condition on the roadway, which calls for extra precautions. Anytime that you are getting on the road, you can expect a rain just to give you a little bit more of an alertness, reminder to slow down. You just want to make sure you're getting to your destination safer. I want to take this time also, a couple of you were asking, and I want to make sure that you get this question answered. For those that are looking to make weekend plans and maybe looking at this and starting to get discouraged, is this going to have any sort of impact on the weekend?
Right. That's a great question. So I always say we're going to have the side effects of this system for the weekend. So when a weather system moves through, you get your direct impact, which in this case is the rain and the wind, but you also get some side effects, and that's just naturally the progression of weather. Thankfully, no, the rain and any kind of potential, though isolated today, for severe weather, that's not going to carry with us into the weekend. The weekend's going to have its own issues. It is going to be cold, and it is still going to be pretty breezy Saturday, but thankfully rain-free for the weekend. And we can take people through that forecast and talk about even heading into next week. If you think it's going to be cold this weekend, where we're going to be in the 40s for the afternoon, you just wait until we head into next week. We have the potential for maybe some winter weather next week. Wind chill's going to be very, very cold next week. So to answer your question, no, this weather isn't going to extend into the weekend, but we will have side effects of this weather system continue with us into the weekend. So let's talk about the forecast. Not only for today, we'll kind of briefly go through what's happening today because this is our First Alert Weather Day, and it's important to keep you informed on what's happening today and what we are anticipating as we make our way through the rest of today, especially now that we're approaching 3 o'clock. A lot of you are probably getting ready to maybe call it a day for what is a long weekend for a lot of you with MLK Day on Monday. So we want to get you ready for what you can expect, not only today as you start wrapping up your Friday, but also as you head into the weekend and into next week, which for a lot of you, of course, is a short week. But I will tell you, while you're going to need the raincoat today, you're definitely going to need the winter coat as we head into next week. So let's get you right into your forecast. We're going to start with our First Alert Weather Day today. And that is for, of course, not only the widespread rain that's going to impact your commute, but the wind that could cause some problems when it comes to trees and power lines. We saw some trees and power lines come down on Tuesday, and we picked up a lot of rain on Tuesday. But now we have more rain falling. The ground is saturated, and we're still going to have that wind that's going to rip through today. We have a wind advisory for just about all the area, actually for all the area. That goes into 1 o'clock tomorrow morning for gusts as high as 45. We have a high wind warning for the mountains, and I want to show you that really quickly. This is for... Again, the mountains are far northern counties. We have that high wind warning where gusts upwards of 55 will be possible. That does include Ellijay. That includes Union, Towns, Fannin County. And it looks like the wind advisory for the rest of the area, for the rest of North Georgia, where gusts upwards of 40, maybe even 45 will be possible. So again, our first alert weather day, this is kind of what we're looking at, just a generic overview. Scattered storms through around 6 o'clock. Things will start to clear off to the east. So the last people to deal with this will be from Athens down to Eatonton. The biggest risk is going to be strong wind. And then, of course, we also have a very low-end threat for a tornado. That threat isn't none, but it's not necessarily as elevated as we thought. And we're going to take you through essentially why that is happening in the next couple of minutes here. Let's just take a quick check of First Alert Radar, where it is raining, but no severe weather ongoing. And that's good news. If you were with us at the top of the stream around 12:30, I mentioned that we were going to keep an eye out in Alabama to kind of track the storms as they made their way into Georgia. That's really, a lot of times, Alabama's weather is very similar to our weather because of how close proximity they are, not only to us here in Georgia, but we're very similar in distance to the Gulf of Mexico, and that is usually our moisture source and our heat source this time of year. And so, thankfully, we haven't seen any severe weather yet in Alabama, and now these showers, not really a lot of thunderstorm activity rolling into North Georgia, but notice you could see very heavy rain. In fact, moving right through Peachtree City over near our radar, those pink and purple colors, that's indicating very heavy rain, which is going to reduce your visibility on the roadways. So something we'll be watching very closely for you. Now, temperatures out there right now are chilly, fairly cold, and that's because we have a wedge in place. And a wedge is essentially when an area of high pressure, let me get my graphic up here for you really quickly, an area of high pressure to our northeast helps spill in cooler temperatures. And you can see the blue extending to Blairsville, that deeper blue color, that is a true wedge right there. When you see the coldest air up to the northeast, and then it's spilling into Atlanta. Right now we're only at 48 degrees in the city of Atlanta, and I will tell you, when it rains like this, that can reinforce the wedge. And now, you probably noticed over the past couple of days our severe weather threat lessening. Well, models really struggle when you have a huge weather system, a potent weather system like the one that's extended across the lower 48, and you have a wedge to battle it. It's kind of like, which one's going to win? Is it going to be the weather system, or is it going to be the wedge? And so models struggle with that. But as you get closer to the event, they obviously have a little bit more higher resolution to work with, and so we can kind of get a better idea. So as we got closer to the event, models were like, okay, it's looking like that wedge is going to win a little more, so our severe weather threat's going to be a lot more isolated, and that is very evident by our temperatures. That's very evident by the look outside. This view here over downtown, you can see that kind of misty look. That is when a wedge is in place. Of course, we also have showers ongoing, but we saw the low-hanging clouds over the Midtown skyline. That's just a really true indication that that wedge is still in place for us. And what that does, why that's important, is because that keeps our atmosphere very stable and not as storm prone, and especially not as severe storm prone. So let's take you really quick just to a little explainer graphic, and then we're going to take you through hour by hour what to expect for the rest of the day. So what we were watching was a warm front, and behind warm fronts is warm and unstable air. And then behind cold fronts is that cold, more dense air. And what happens is when you have that warm and unstable air in place and that colder, dense air behind the cold front comes and lifts it all up, that creates those explosive storms. So we were trying to see how far north that warm front was ultimately going to lift. And that wedge is winning. So that colder air is taking over, which is keeping our atmosphere more stable and ultimately reducing our severe weather threat. But again, not necessarily none. And the wind, because of this system, is really going to continue to pick up. So the wind and the rain combination, of course, that creates its own problems. And that's what we're really going to be focusing on through the rest of the day today. Of course, we'll still watch for maybe an isolated tornado. If you live in Heard, Troop, Merriweather, Upson, Pike, Lamar, we'll be keeping a really close eye on you because the wedge usually doesn't get that strong that it overtakes your forecast area. So we'll still be watching because we do still have a lot of wind shear, which is that change in wind direction and speed with height, especially south of I-20. So again, as we head through the next half hour or so, we'll be watching down to our south for maybe an isolated tornado that could happen. But again, that threat extremely low, extremely isolated for us. But we'll still keep an eye on it for you as we make our way through our first alert weather day. Let's take you through Futurecast here. Again, by 3 o'clock, still some heavy rain for the mountains, very heavy high wind rather. Temperatures generally in the 40s to low 50s, but look at LaGrange. You could over the next few hours jump into the mid 50s, which will ultimately give you a little more juice to work with as that front moves in. So as we make our way closer to 4 o'clock, a lot of you are headed home from work at that hour. Rain will be ongoing, could be heavy at times. And just because of the heavy rain that we've already seen, that could lead to some ponding in the roadways. So just take it easy out there. And then as we head towards 4:30, if you are in far west Georgia, any threat for severe weather is over. Rain will be ongoing through downtown. And then everything shifts east of the city from Gainesville to Athens to Covington down to Eatonton around 6. And by that point, we're pretty much done with any kind of severe weather threat, and it's going to stay windy and quite cold. So let's take a look at the threats, kind of threat by threat here. That tornado risk is low. This is a new update from the Storm Prediction Center. That 2% risk really for just about everyone. So a very low end tornado risk for us. And then the damaging wind risk also is going to be the most widespread threat for the area. So wind will definitely be the greatest issue. We talked about that wind advisory that's in effect until 1 o'clock in the morning. Let's take you through the wind gusts. So as we go towards 4 o'clock, when that front's starting to move in, we're talking about widespread gusts 15 to 25. See that deep purple color up in the mountains? That could be wind gusts upwards of 40, maybe 45 miles per hour for the afternoon. And just with the saturated soil, with the rain continuing to fall, the wind has been kind of constant all day. It's been a very breezy day overall today. That's going to batter the trees around. And if that continues, that could lead to some down trees, which ultimately could lead to down power lines. Not going to see quite as much of a flooding threat as we did on Tuesday, actually not near that, but some ponding the road still is possible. And as we make our way into the evening, as that front starts to subside and push off the coast, our wind gusts will naturally die down, but it'll still be a little bit breezy as we head into Saturday for your weekend. I do want to talk about your weekend forecast. Here's a look at just kind of an overview. So Saturday, mid 40s, freezing start on Sunday. You're definitely going to need to keep those pipes dripping as we head into the weekend and into next week, even more so next week. But mid 40s on Saturday, mid to upper 40s on Sunday, and we'll actually see a good bit of sunshine over the weekend, which will be really nice. It's one thing if it's 40 and cloudy and windy. It's another thing if it's 40s and sunny. Makes a big difference, right? So a lot of sunshine at least this weekend, but it is going to feel like the 30s a lot of your day on Saturday because of that breeze that will continue. Heading into next week, look at the temperature outlook. It is going to be downright cold, and not only for us, but for much of the United States. The only people who are near average or warmer is the West Coast. Everyone else, we're not only just colder than normal, we are much colder than normal on the way next week, and get ready for it. So essentially what we're going to be watching is, we've talked about this really just progressive, if not aggressive pattern that we've been in, whichever way you want to put it. But it's really been a busy weather pattern for us here across the Southeast, and that is going to continue. And this is a typical El Nino, guys. So El Nino for the Southeast in the winter, that means that the jet stream is going to dip a little further south. That's going to bring us a rainier and colder winter. And ultimately, that can lead to the potential for severe weather as well. So just kind of buckle up. Stay with us here in Atlanta News First. We'll get you through every event, whether it's the potential for severe weather or maybe the potential for winter weather, which we will be talking about here. So we're going to watch this low that's going to be all the way up in Canada. It's carrying very cold air, and that low is going to sink through the lower 48 and bring bitterly cold temperatures. We're talking negative wind chills for a lot of spots in the Midwest. And then for us here at home, it's going to get very cold. We're talking potential single-digit wind chill temperatures, very, very frigid air on the way as we head into Tuesday and Wednesday. So you really need to start this weekend. I would start thinking about maybe going to get the little protectors for your outdoor pipes to keep them nice and warm. You're definitely going to need to drip the pipes next week. So we do have a first alert for next week because of this very cold air and maybe the potential for some winter weather. So we're just giving that early heads up. Hey, you're going to need to do all the things to winterize your home, whether it's strip your pipes, cover your plants, bring your pets indoors. All those things are really important to keep in mind as that cold Canadian Arctic air makes its way in. So we're going to have a cold front move in on Sunday. So cold air will start to spill in. Then we get that deep dive of the trough that brings the cold Canadian air in. So if we have enough moisture, because at the same time, there's a lot of things working in tandem here. We'll have a low developing along the Gulf. The Gulf, of course, our moisture source this time of year. So, and a lot of times during the year. But nonetheless, if we have enough moisture, the cold air is already there. And that's sometimes the question. Is the cold air like overrunning us? Are we really getting the cold air in all the levels? Because that's the problem here in North Georgia. In order to get snow, you need it to be freezing in all levels of the atmosphere. And that's kind of the hard part here. But it is undoubtedly in place. The cold air is in place next week. So now it's a question of, okay, are we going to get enough moisture? Well, according to this model, which is the European model, Monday night, maybe a few showers as that low rides along the coast. And let me get back to that graphic for you because it did cut me a little short, didn't it? It cut me short before the fun stuff. So as we head into Monday night, potentially Tuesday, look at that, maybe some snow showers. So it's a possibility, not a great chance, but there's still a chance that Monday afternoon into the evening, potentially into Tuesday morning, maybe we get some fun winter weather for North Georgia. I will say this model's backing off a lot more than it did earlier today, but some models a little more aggressive than others when it comes to that snow chance for next week. So we'll be keeping an eye on Monday night into Tuesday for that potential for maybe some fun winter weather for us, which I say if it's going to be that cold, it might as well snow, right? We could use it. But of course, we'll also watch for if we have enough moisture for any kind of icy conditions. So things we'll be watching for next week. Here's a look at your First Alert 7-day forecast. So we do have that First Alert weather day today, as we'll watch for the potential for maybe an isolated severe storm. The rain and the wind combined could cause some problems when it comes to the roadways, maybe some trees down, just things that we'll be watching for you. But the impact, thankfully, a lot lower than what we originally expected, and that is all thanks to the wedge, which is still going to give us that really cold and damp and misty afternoon and evening. Tomorrow, sunny and chilly. In fact, Chief Meteorologist Jennifer Valdez just updated this forecast for you. So a little warmer, it looks like. Saturday, instead of 46, we're at 47, 49 on Sunday. Mostly sunny skies, really just a nice but cold weekend. Mostly cloudy on Monday with a high near 50. And then that little icon in between there, that's indicating that chance for maybe some snow showers Monday night into Tuesday, something we'll be watching. Very cold. Look at Wednesday morning. We're waking up in the teens. Wind chills potentially as we head into the early and middle part of next week could potentially, and I put an emphasis on potentially, be in the single digits. It's going to be very, very cold by Wednesday. And then mid-30s Wednesday afternoon. We're going to wake up in the 20s and teens Thursday. And then another chance for showers on Friday as we just continue along. We're on a roller coaster, y'all, so hang on tight. Because this time of year, when you get this going, I say everything's on a conveyor belt. It's like a factory line where you see all the products just go on that conveyor belt and go around, or even better, because I know we've all been there. Hartsfield Jackson, when you go to pick up your luggage on the little trolley there, on the little carousel, that's what I'm looking for. That's what our weather pattern is like. It's just never ending right now, especially being in an El Nino. We're going to constantly get these weather systems roll in, and not only will they bring us the chance for rain, maybe the potential for winter weather, but also maybe the potential for severe weather. So in a very dynamic pattern right now, and we'll get you through it every step of the way, whether we're looking at a chance for storms, whether we're looking at a chance for winter weather, or whether we're just simply looking at the chance for some very cold air that's going to settle in. So I'm going to show you the 7-day forecast one more time here, just to give you an idea of what to expect. We did have someone ask about the weekend and if this was going to carry into the weekend. Thankfully, no. We are not looking at this carry into the weekend, but it will still be plenty chilly. Again, just a side effect of our weather system today as it makes its way through. But today, going to be very windy. We had that chance for rain, of course, continuing through the rest of the day today. Our First Alert weather team will be here to track our First Alert weather team will be here to track any kind of storms that pop up if they do, but we will also be here to inform you on if there's any power outages. And I'm going to try and take a look. Let's see if I can manage to get this open here and try and take a look into our National Weather Service chat. I might be able to do it. I might not be able to do it. But either way, our team of meteorologists here, not only do we work amongst ourselves, but we also work with the National Weather Service to get an idea of what to expect if we are thinking that there's going to be some sort of watch, if we're thinking there's going to be any kind of storm that we need to watch. Usually that's coming out of Alabama. The Weather Service over in Peachtree City will be like, hey, we're watching this cell, or hey, we received a wind gust report of X amount miles per hour. We've already had wind gust reports over 48 miles per hour in some spots. We're getting a lot of reports of downed trees up in Dade County, which is out of our viewing area, but still that is happening, so we'll be keeping an eye on it. First Alert meteorologist Cutter Martin is in our Cool Ray First Alert tracker, so he's going to be keeping an eye on the roads for you as we make our way through the rest of our First Alert weather day. I just can't stress enough, I think the big message that we're going to convey at this point is you just need to be really careful on the roads, because obviously the rain, that's one thing, and that causes a problem. Any kind of rain in Atlanta causes problems, right, on the roadways. But a lot of you are probably excited to get home. It's a Friday, heading into a long weekend for a lot of you. So I know that sometimes just makes you extra anxious to get home, but try and subdue that angst a little bit and, take it easy, because the roads will be wet, and also with the wind, that's going to cause problems. We drive among a lot of semi trucks here, or tractor trailers. This wind is no joke for them. It can actually be a little bit dangerous to drive those higher profile vehicles when it's as windy as it's going to be this evening. So you just need to be really careful driving around those, and be very careful if you're driving in some heavily wooded areas, as that can create some problems, of course, with the potential for downed trees. But I do want to talk about quickly that we do not actively right now on First Alert Radar have any kind of severe weather. There is no severe weather watches, which if you were with us, you know that a watch means to get ready for severe weather. We are not under any kind of active watches right now, nor are there any warnings remotely close to our area. So that is good news, because a lot of times we'll watch how things progress starting back in Alabama and make their way into Georgia. But we are not seeing any kind of watches, any kind of warnings right now. So that is a good sign. Doesn't mean that there's not going to be any fire up over the next few hours, but our severe weather threat definitely diminished. Nonetheless, going to be a rainy and windy day, and that causes problems on its own and could pose a threat to your safety. And we saw that, unfortunately, on Tuesday after the rain. While it was definitely rainier on Tuesday, but after the rain and wind with the saturated ground and the wind that did down trees, that did unfortunately result in a fatality. And I'm not implying that that's going to happen today, because every weather situation, every weather event is different and unique in its own way. But that's just something you need to be mindful of as we receive more rain today, as the wind continues to pick up. A great time to remind you to download our First Alert weather app. If you don't already have it, it really is a good tool to have it. I'm not just saying that because I work here. I have a lot of weather apps on my phone, and this is by and large one of the best ones, if not the best one, just because of all of the features that it has. It really is a dynamic app, and we have 7 meteorologists here that are constantly updating this, not only with video forecasts, but we will manually go in there and change the temperatures hour by hour. If we think there's going to be more sunshine in the afternoon, we're constantly updating so that you can get everything you need to know to get ready for your day on a calm day, or on a day where we're expecting some weather like today and like we did earlier this week. And even in the days to come, I'm sure you're going to want to know, and your kids are probably going to want to know, if we are going to receive any kind of winter weather on Monday and Tuesday. So we will, throughout the weekend, I'll be here in the morning. First Alert meteorologist Cutter Martin will be here over the evening on the weekend. We'll be updating you constantly on that app to give you updates on that winter weather potential. And just get you ready for what's to come. So here's a look at what this app offers. Video forecast updates, like I said, throughout the day. Rodney, Ella, and I usually in the morning. First Alert Chief Meteorologist Jennifer Valdez in the afternoon. And then, of course, you have Fred, Cutter, Patrick, the whole crew, always updating videos throughout the afternoon. Severe weather alerts, which on a day like today, important, just in case we do manage to squeeze out a severe thunderstorm or maybe a tornado warning, it will let you know. You want to make sure you go to the settings and turn on the notifications for severe weather alerts. And you can also put your location in to the app. And so it will cater alerts to your area, so to let you know if heavy rain is moving into your area, if lightning is detected within your area, and it usually gives you a pretty good lead time too. But the coolest thing, you can get live First Alert radar with alerts, so it'll show you if the wind advisor's in your area, if you turn that layer on. There's also, it'll let you know if there's a warning in your area, some sort of severe storm warning in your area. And you can also look at future radar. So what we show you on TV, what I showed you through the day, that is also on our First Alert weather app. So if you're like, oh, it's not raining right now, but I want to run errands, so let's see when it's going to start raining near me. You could do that with our First Alert weather app. You don't need to wait for us to be on TV. So quickly want to take you through just one more look at the timing for everything today, because I think this is what a lot of people want to know, just kind of when everything's going to start and finish for you. So right now, heavy rain ongoing in pockets in some spots. I'm looking at one of our interstates right now on one of our cameras, and it is pouring on I-85 in DeKalb County. So mountains getting some heavy rain, pockets of heavy rain elsewhere. Really, the atmosphere is pretty stable right now. It is a chilly rain. It is windy. That cold front will start to move through around 3 o'clock. And by the 3 o'clock, between 3 and 4, I think that's when we're going to really be looking from Carroll County down to Heard, Troup, Meriwether County, as that front makes its way in, maybe a brief isolated tornado. And as we make our way closer to 6 p.m., we'll take you through 4 o'clock, moving through downtown. And as we head towards 6, we're in the clear and you guys can go to bed and breathe easy that we're not going to worry about any more severe weather. Although the threat is isolated, by 6 o'clock, we're going to be said and done with anything today. So hang in there, everyone. We will take you through every step of the way. We will continue to update you on our First Alert weather app and, of course, on air and here on Atlanta News First Plus. Big takeaway, it's going to be a fairly rainy and windy rest of your day. The severe weather threat lower on our First Alert weather day, but you still need to be vigilant as you're making your way out and about. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today, and stay safe, and we will keep you updated here throughout the rest of the day.